The galactic trading vessel Endless Horizon had been flying through space for 6 years. It was a large ship with a crew of 47 aliens from 12 different species. They traded goods between star systems and made decent money doing it. But for the past 3 months, they had a serious problem. They had no cook. The last cook, a 4-armed Velian named Grix, had quit after a disagreement about salary. Since then, the crew had been eating nutrient paste from tubes. The paste had everything a body needed to survive, but it tasted like wet cardboard mixed with sadness. Morale was low. Arguments were common. The chief engineer had threatened to quit twice, but Captain Verkith was desperate. He was a Theshan, a species that looked somewhat like a tall blue humanoid with 4 arms and large dark eyes. He had commanded the Endless Horizon for 15 years and considered himself a patient leader. But even his patience had limits. When a human applied for the cook position at the starport on Nexus 7, Verkith did not hesitate. Humans were common in the galaxy. They had spread out from their small planet called Earth about 200 years ago. The Galactic Registry classified them as Category 12, which meant they were considered docile, friendly, and suitable for simple jobs. They were not particularly strong or fast or smart by galactic standards, but they were reliable workers who rarely caused trouble. Human who walked into Verkith's office was named Danny Cole. He was a stocky man in his early 40s with short, brown hair that was going gray at the edges. His face was weathered and lined, like someone who had spent too much time outdoors. His hands were thick and calloused. He wore simple clothes and carried a worn duffel bag over one shoulder. "You are the cook?" Verkith asked, looking at his datapad. "Yes, sir," Danny said. His voice was calm and quiet. "Been cooking for about 12 years now. Worked on 3 different ships before this. I have references if you need them." Verkith waved a hand. "No need. Can you start today?" Danny smiled. It was a small smile, tired but genuine. "I can start right now if you want." The medical examination was standard procedure. The ship's medical officer was Crixtal, an insectoid being from the Vethran homeworld. She stood 7 feet tall with a hard exoskeleton and large compound eyes that could see in multiple spectrums. She was efficient and professional and did not believe in small talk. She scanned Danny with her medical equipment and noted several unusual readings. His bone density was higher than normal for a human. His cardiovascular system was extremely robust. His lung capacity was impressive. There were old fracture lines throughout his skeleton, dozens of them, all healed. There was scar tissue on his internal organs. There were marks on his skin that looked like old burns. Crixtal looked at Danny. "You have many old injuries." Danny shrugged. "I have lived a full life. These fractures. There are at least 37 healed breaks." "How did you sustain so many injuries?" "Accidents," Danny said simply. "Clumsy when I was younger." Crixtal did not believe this explanation, but it was not her job to investigate. The human was healthy enough to work. She filed her report and cleared him for duty. Danny's quarters were small, just a bed and a storage locker and a tiny bathroom. He did not complain. He unpacked his duffel bag carefully. Inside were clothes, a few personal items, and a collection of cooking tools that looked old and well used. There were knives of various sizes, worn wooden spoons, a heavy cast iron pan that seemed to weigh at least 10 pounds, and small containers of spices that he had collected over the years. He reported to the galley within the hour. The galley was a mess. Dirty equipment everywhere. Expired food in the storage units. The previous cook had not been organized, and 3 months without anyone in charge had made things worse. Danny stood in the doorway and looked at the chaos. Then he rolled up his sleeves and got to work. By the end of his first day, the galley was clean. By the end of his first week, The crew of the Endless Horizon had forgotten what nutrient paste tasted like. Danny made things none of them had ever experienced. He made something called chili, a thick red stew with meat and beans and spices that made the Deshan engineers cry with joy. He made bread from scratch, filling the corridors with a warm smell that drew crew members to the mess hall like a magnet. He made something called breakfast, a concept that most species in the galaxy had never considered. Suddenly, the ship ran on Danny's schedule. First meal, second meal, third meal. Snacks in between for those who wanted them. The crew began to change. Arguments decreased. Productivity increased. Crew members who had barely spoken to each other now sat together at meals, sharing food and conversation. The mess hall became the heart of the ship. Captain Verkith watched all of this with amazement. He had hired a cook. He had not expected a miracle worker. He visited the galley one evening to thank Danny personally. He found the human alone, preparing ingredients for the next day. Danny worked with quiet efficiency, his hands moving in practiced patterns. "You have made quite an impression," Verkith said. Danny did not look up from his cutting board. "Just doing my job, Captain. The crew is happier than I have seen them in years. You have done something I could not do with speeches or bonuses." Danny smiled that small, tired smile. "Food does that. Brings people together. Reminds them they are alive." Verkith studied the human. There was something about Danny Cole that he could not quite identify. Something in the way he moved, the way he held himself, the way his eyes were always watching. It was like there was more to this man than what appeared on the surface, but Verkith pushed the thought aside. Danny was a cook, nothing more. A good cook, perhaps the best cook the Endless Horizon had ever had. That was all that mattered. "Let me know if you need anything," Verkith said. "Supplies, equipment, anything at all. Will do, Captain." Verkith left the galley feeling satisfied. He had solved his cook problem. The crew was happy. Everything was going well. He did not notice the scars on Danny's forearms. He did not wonder about the old burns on his hands. He did not ask why a simple cook moved like a predator even, when he was just chopping vegetables. Nobody did. The Endless Horizon flew on through the stars. Its crew well fed and content, completely unaware that their harmless human chef was anything but harmless. The attack came without warning during the third meal cycle. Danny was in the galley preparing a dish he called pot roast. The smell of cooking meat filled the corridors. Half the crew was already in the mess hall, eating and talking and enjoying the warmth of good food. Everything was normal. Everything was peaceful. Then the alarms started screaming. Red lights flashed throughout the ship. Captain Verkith's voice came over the speakers, tight with fear. "All crew to secure locations. We have been boarded. Repeat, we have been boarded. This is not a drill." Danny turned off the stove. He wiped his hands on his apron and listened. He could hear distant sounds of metal tearing. Heavy footsteps in the lower decks. Screaming. The crew members in the mess hall were panicking. They were traders and engineers and technicians. They were not fighters. Most of them had never seen violence in their lives. They huddled together, trembling, not knowing what to do. Danny walked to the door and looked out into the corridor. He saw nothing yet, but he could hear them coming. Multiple targets, heavy, moving fast. He recognized the sound of their footsteps. Korr van. The Corvan were one of the most feared species in the galaxy. They came from a high-gravity world that had made them incredibly strong. They stood nearly 8 feet tall with thick armored hides that could stop most weapons. They had retractable claws on their hands that could cut through metal. They were pirates and raiders who preyed on trading vessels like the Endless Horizon. 6 of them had breached the cargo hold. Danny watched the security feed on the wall monitor. He saw the Corvan moving through the lower decks, smashing through doors, looking for valuables and victims. 2 crew members had already been killed, a young Dacian technician and a valiant cargo handler. Their bodies lay crumpled in the corridor. Danny's expression did not change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Something cold and old and dangerous. He turned to the terrified crew in the mess hall. "Stay here. Lock the door behind me. Do not open it for anyone except me or the captain." A veteran engineer named Toxil stared at him. "What are you going to do?" "I am going to handle this. You are a cook." Danny did not answer. He picked up his cast iron pan from the stove. It was heavy, at least 10 pounds of solid iron, seasoned with years of use. He held it in his right hand like it weighed nothing. "Lock the door," he said again, and walked out into the corridor. The crew watched him go in stunned silence. Then they locked the door. Danny moved through the ship with a calmness that seemed impossible. He did not run. He did not hide. His footsteps were silent on the metal floor. His breathing was slow and steady. He was not afraid. He had been afraid many times in his life. On worlds where the air tried to kill him. In jungles where everything with teeth wanted to eat him. In deserts where the sun could cook a man alive in hours. He had learned long ago that fear was useful only in small doses. Too much fear made you slow, made you stupid, made you dead. The first Corvin never saw him coming. Danny came around a corner and found the raiders searching through a supply closet. The creature was massive, nearly twice Danny's size, with gray armored skin and small, cruel eyes. It turned at the sound of movement, claws extending. Danny swung the pan. The impact made a sound like a bell ringing. The Corvin staggered. Danny did not give it time to recover. He swung again and again, targeting the weak points he knew existed in Corvin anatomy. The joints, the throat, the nerve clusters behind the jaw. The raider fell in less than 10 seconds. Danny stepped over the body and kept moving. The second and third Corvin were together in the engineering section. They were laughing about something, their claws dripping with blood. They stopped laughing when they saw the small human walking toward them. "What is this?" One of them growled. "A volunteer?" Danny did not respond with words. He responded with violence. The fight was fast and brutal. The Corvin were strong and quick. The Danny was faster. He moved like water, flowing around their attacks, striking at vulnerable spots with his pan and his fists and his elbows. He broke bones. He crushed windpipes. He did things that should have been impossible for a creature his size. When it was over, 2 more raiders lay dead on the floor. Danny was breathing harder now. There was purple blood on his apron and his arms and his face. One of the Corvin had caught him with a claw, leaving a deep gash on his left shoulder. He ignored it. 3 more to go. He found the 4th raider near the bridge, trying to break through the sealed door. Captain Verketh and several crew members were trapped inside. Danny could hear them shouting, could hear the fear in their voices. The Corvin heard Danny approach and turned with a snarl. "You killed my brothers." "Yes," Danny said. The raider charged. Danny sidestepped, swinging his pan into the creature's knee. Cartilage crunched. The Corvin stumbled. Danny was on it immediately, relentless, efficient. The fight lasted less than 30 seconds. The last 2 raiders found Danny before he found them. They came from behind, having heard the commotion. They were smarter than their brothers, more cautious. They circled Danny like predators, claws ready, eyes gleaming. "Just one human," one of them said. "One small human." "That small human killed 4 of us," the other replied. Danny stood between them, pan in hand, blood dripping from his shoulder. He was tired. He was hurt. He did not care. "You can leave," he said quietly. "Go back to your ship. Fly away. I will not stop you." The Corvin laughed. "You think we fear you?" "No," Danny said. "But you should." They attacked together. Danny moved. When the security team finally managed to unlock the bridge and venture out, they found Danny Cole sitting against the wall, breathing heavily. Around him lay 6 Corvan raiders, all of them dead. His cast iron pan was dented but intact. His apron was soaked with purple blood. Captain Verkith stared at the carnage. He could not speak. He could not understand what he was seeing. Danny looked up at him with tired eyes. "Sorry about the noise," he said. "Dinner is going to be about 20 minutes late." Then he stood up, wincing at the pain in his shoulder, and walked back toward the galley. The crew of the Endless Horizon watched him go in absolute silence. They had thought they knew their cook. They had thought he was harmless. They had been very, very wrong. 3 days passed after the attack. The Endless Horizon continued its journey through space, but nothing felt the same. The crew looked at Danny differently now. They watched him when he cooked. They whispered when he walked by. They did not know what to think. Danny noticed, of course. He noticed everything, but he did not say anything about it. He just kept cooking, kept serving meals, kept doing his job as if nothing had happened. The gash on his shoulder was bandaged and healing. He moved a little slower than before, but he did not complain. The crew had many questions. How had their cook killed 6 Corvan raiders by himself? Where had he learned to fight like that? What else was he hiding? But nobody wanted to ask. They were afraid of the answers. Crickstill was not afraid. The ship's medical officer had been thinking about Danny Cole since the day she had examined him. The scars, the fractures, the unusual physiology. She had filed these observations away as minor curiosities. Now she understood that she had missed something important. She found Danny in the hydroponics bay on the 3rd evening after the attack. He was tending to a row of small green plants, carefully watering them with a gentle hand. The plants were peppers she recognized. A human vegetable. Danny did not look up when she entered. "Doctor, what can I do for you?" Crickstall stood at the edge of the growing beds, her compound eye studying him. "I have been reviewing your medical scans again. I figured you would. The fracture patterns across your skeleton, the scar tissue on your internal organs, the radiation scarring in your lungs, the evidence of atmospheric burns on your skin." She paused. "These injuries are not consistent with a civilian life." Danny continued watering his plants. "No, they are not. You have the physiology of a survival specialist. I compared your biometrics with known human occupations. The closest match was something called a wilderness survival instructor. But even that does not explain the radiation damage or the atmospheric burns." Danny was quiet for a moment. Then he straightened up and looked at her directly. His eyes were calm but tired. "Before I was a cook," he said, "I did some traveling." "What kind of traveling?" He set down his watering container and leaned against the growing bed. "I spent 18 years working for the Colonial Survey Corporation, Planetary Assessment Division, First Contact Surveying." Crickstill's antennae went rigid. She knew what planetary surveying was. "That work is done by drones." "It is now," Danny agreed. "It was not always. Back in the early days of human expansion, they needed eyes on the ground. People who could go to uncharted worlds and figure out if they were worth colonizing. People who could survive long enough to send back reports. You were one of these people. For 18 years. They would drop us on a planet with minimal equipment. Food for 3 days. Water for 5. A basic shelter kit. A communication beacon. Our job was to survive for 6 weeks while gathering data on the local environment." Crickstall processed this information. "Uncharted worlds. You mean worlds that had not been surveyed by any means?" "That is right. No satellite mapping. No atmospheric analysis. No biological cataloging. We went in blind and figured it out as we went. How many worlds did you survey? Danny's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. I stopped counting at 40. Some of them were easy. Temperate climates. Friendly ecosystems. Nice places to spend 6 weeks. And the others? The others were not easy. He picked up his watering container and turned back to his plants. 8 of them were classified as Deathworlds after I submitted my reports. Crystal felt her exoskeleton tighten. Deathworlds were planets so hostile that even visiting them required military-grade equipment and years of specialized training. They were planets where the environment itself was trying to kill you every second of every day. Surviving one was considered a remarkable achievement. Surviving 8 was supposed to be impossible. Which worlds? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Danny listed them like he was reading items from a grocery list. Vexnar 7, the acid swamps. The rain there could dissolve your skin in minutes. Cathros Prime, the razorwing migrations. Billions of flying predators that stripped anything organic to the bone. Hell's Gate, the sentient fungal networks. They got into your head, made you see things that were not there. He paused, still watering his peppers. Nalacor 9, the thermal vents and the Night Stalkers. Prometheus to 4, the electrical storms and the glass deserts. Tartarus 3, his voice grew quieter. I spent 9 months on Tartarus 3 after my extraction shuttle crashed. The company listed me as dead. Sent condolences to my family. I walked out of the jungle on my own power and showed up at the nearest outpost asking for a ride home. Crystal did not know what to say. She had studied human biology. She had read about their homeworld, a planet called Earth. She knew that Earth was considered a borderline death world by galactic standards. Extreme temperature variations. Seismic activity. Hostile megafauna. Humans had evolved in an environment that would kill most species in days. But this was something else. This was a human who had taken that evolutionary heritage and pushed it to limits she could not comprehend. Why did you stop? She finally asked. Danny set down his watering container. I got old. The company started using drones and automated systems. They did not need people like me anymore. Said the survival rates were too low for the insurance companies. And so you became a cook. I learned to cook out there. He smiled slightly. When you were stuck on a hostile world for weeks at a time, you learn to make anything edible. You learn that a good meal can keep you sane when everything else is trying to kill you. After a while, I realized I enjoyed cooking more than surviving. Crystal considered this. The crew's afraid of you now. I know. Does that bother you? Danny turned to face her fully. His eyes were ancient, she realized. Not in years, but in experience. This was a man who had seen things that most beings could not imagine. Who had done things that would break lesser creatures. I did not come here to scare anyone, he said quietly. I came here to cook. To make good food for good people. That is all I want. But when those raiders came aboard, when I saw what they were doing to the crew, I could not just hide in the galley and hope it would go away. He picked up his watering container again and returned to his plants. I am still just the cook, Doctor. I am still the same man I was last week. I just have more experience than most people realize. Crystal watched him tend his peppers for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. I will keep your confidence, she said. But I suspect others will have questions. They always do, Danny said. I will answer them when they are ready to ask. Crystal left the hydroponics bay with more questions than answers. But she also left with a new understanding of what it meant to be human. They were not the docile, unremarkable species the Galactic Registry claimed. They were survivors. Adaptable, relentless, and far more dangerous than anyone wanted to believe. and one of the most dangerous humans she had ever encountered was tending pepper plants and planning dinner. The distress signal reached the endless horizon on a cold morning in the third week after the pirate attack. Danny was in the galley preparing breakfast when Captain Verkith called an emergency meeting. Everyone gathered in the mess hall with worried faces. "We have received a signal from Molecule 9, Verkith announced. His voice was heavy. A human colonial survey team crashed there 6 days ago. 3 survivors are requesting extraction. The room went silent. Everyone knew about Malachor 9. It was one of the most dangerous planets in the sector. The atmosphere was corrosive. The temperature swings were extreme. The native predators were legendary. 3 separate galactic governments had quarantined the planet and declared it off-limits to all traffic. "We cannot help them," said Toxel, the veteran engineer. "Our ship is not equipped for that kind of operation. We would need specialized equipment, trained rescue teams, military support." "I agree," said another crew member. "Going to Malachor 9 would be suicide." Verkith nodded slowly. "Standard protocol is to log the distress signal and forward it to the nearest military outpost. They will send a proper rescue team. How long would that take?" Someone asked. 8 to 10 days. The room went quiet again. Everyone understood what that meant. The survivors on Malachor 9 had already been stranded for 6 days. Another 8 to 10 days without rescue would almost certainly mean Death God Danny stood at the back of the room, arms crossed, listening. He had not said a word since the meeting began. "I will go," he said quietly. Every head turned to look at him. Verkith stared at the human cook. "What did you say?" "I said I will go. I can take one of the shuttles, land near their position, and bring them back." "You would die," Verkith said slowly. "Malachor 9 is a death world. The atmosphere alone would kill an unprotected being within hours." "Probably not," Danny said. "I know Malachor 9. I spent 14 weeks there in 2847. The Northern Hemisphere is survivable if you know the patterns. You need to understand the thermal cycles, know when to move and when to shelter. You need to know which predators hunt during the day and which ones come out at night." The crew stared at him in disbelief. "You have been to Malachor 9 before?" Verkith asked. "It was my 3rd Deathworld survey. I was 26 years old. The experience was educational." Verkith did not know what to say. He looked around at his crew. Their faces showed fear and confusion and something else that might have been hope. "You want to go alone," Verkith said finally, "to a quarantined death world, to rescue strangers you have never met." Danny shrugged. "They are probably hungry and scared. Nobody should have to die alone on a world like that." The debate lasted another hour. Some crew members argued against the mission, saying it was too dangerous, that Danny would just become another casualty. Others argued in favor, saying that if anyone could survive Malachor 9, it was the man who had killed 6 Corvan raiders with a frying pan dot in the end. Verkith made the decision. "Take Shuttle 3. It has the best atmospheric seals. We will hold position at the edge of the quarantine zone and wait for your return." Danny nodded. "Keep dinner warm for me." He was gone within the hour. The journey to Malachor 9 took 2 days. Danny spent the time preparing. He gathered supplies from the ship's stores. Food, water, medical equipment, environmental suits for the survivors. He packed light. Extra weight meant slower movement, and on Malachor 9, speed could mean the difference between life and death. The planet appeared on his view screen like a bruise in space. Swirling clouds of toxic gas covered most of the surface. Lightning flashed constantly in the upper atmosphere. Even from orbit, it looked angry and hostile. Danny landed the shuttle in a rocky valley 2 kilometers from the survivor's last known position. The atmospheric seals held as he powered down the engines. Outside, the air was a thick yellow-brown color, filled with particles that would eat through exposed skin in minutes. He put on his environmental suit and stepped outside. The memories came back immediately. The smell of sulfur and ozone that seeped through the suit's filters. The constant rumble of distant volcanic activity. The way the ground felt unstable under his feet. Like the planet itself was alive and waiting for him to make a mistake. Danny started walking. He moved carefully, reading the environment the way most people read books. The direction of the wind told him about approaching thermal fronts. The behavior of small creatures in the rocks told him about nearby predators. The color of the sky told him how much time he had before the next temperature swing. He found the first survivor on the second day. Her name was Katie Brennan, a geologist in her 30s. She was huddled in a shallow cave, half dead from dehydration and exposure. Her environmental suit was damaged. She had been breathing filtered air for almost a week, slowly suffocating. "Who are you?" she whispered when Danny appeared. "My name is Danny. I am here to take you home." "Where are the others?" She pointed weakly toward the east. "Sam and Lucy. They went looking for water 2 days ago. They have not come back." Danny gave her water and food and a fresh air filter. Then he went looking for the others. He found them on the third day, trapped in a narrow canyon by a night stalker. The creature was massive, nearly 30 feet long, with scales that shifted color to match its surroundings. It had been hunting them for hours, playing with them like a cat with mice. Danny picked up a rock and started sharpening it against another rock. The night stalker noticed him and turned, sensing new prey. "Stay behind me," Danny told the terrified survivors. Their names were Sam Ortiz and Lucy Park. Sam was a pilot, maybe 25. Lucy was a botanist, even younger. "You cannot fight that thing," Sam said. "It will kill you." "We will see." Danny said that the night stalker attacked. What happened next would haunt the survivors for the rest of their lives. Danny moved like something that was not quite human. He dodged the creature's strikes, rolling and weaving, using the terrain to his advantage. He struck at weak points that should have been invisible, targeting nerve clusters and sensory organs. The fight lasted nearly 15 minutes. When it was over, the night stalker lay dead on the canyon floor, and Danny was covered in its blood. He had a new cut on his arm and what looked like cracked ribs. He did not seem to notice. "Come on," he said. "We need to move before its mate shows up." They reached the shuttle on the 5th day. Danny had kept them alive through 2 thermal storms, 1 acid rain shower, and 3 more predator encounters. He had built shelters from nothing. He had found water where there should have been none. He had cooked the night stalker meat over a chemical fire and made it taste almost good. When the shuttle lifted off from Malachor, Lucy Park started crying. Not from fear or relief, but from something like wonder. She had watched a middle-aged cook walk into hell and walk back out again with 3 lives saved. "Who are you?" she asked as the shuttle broke through the atmosphere. Danny was at the controls, guiding them back toward the endless horizon. He looked tired. He looked hurt. He looked like a man who had done this many times before. "I am just the cook," he said. "Now rest. I will make you all something nice when we get back to the ship." The incident report from the endless horizon traveled through bureaucratic channels for 3 weeks. It passed from the ship to the Trade Authority, from the Trade Authority to the Sector Administration, and from the Sector Administration to the Central Galactic Government on the capital world of Visha Prime. Eventually, it landed on the desk of Administrator Genital, head of the Galactic Species Registry. She was an elderly Theshan with silver-blue skin and eyes that had seen thousands of reports over her long career. She read this one 3 times. The report described a human cook who had killed 6 Corvan raiders with a cooking implement. The same human had then traveled alone to a quarantined Deathworld and rescued 3 survivors. He had done these things casually, as if they were ordinary activities, as if any human could do them. Genital pulled up the species file for humans. Category 12. Docile. Unremarkable. Best suited for simple labor and service positions. This classification had been in place for 200 years, ever since first contact with the cheerful, cooperative beings from the small planet called Earth. She began reading deeper into the file. Humans had arrived on the galactic scene as refugees, fleeing environmental collapse on their homeworld. They had seemed harmless. They were friendly and eager to work. They did not demand much. They filled jobs that other species considered beneath them. Cooks, cleaners, cargo handlers, maintenance workers. Within 50 years, humans were everywhere. Genital searched the galactic census data. There were now over 8 billion humans spread across 2,000 worlds. They worked on trading ships and space stations. They ran restaurants and repair shops. They served as translators and teachers and technicians. They had integrated into galactic society so quietly, so helpfully, that nobody had thought to question their presence. But nobody had thought to ask what they were truly capable of. Genital pulled up the file on Earth, the human homeworld. She read the environmental assessment that had been conducted 200 years ago, when humanity first made contact with the galactic community. The report was disturbing. Earth was a world of extreme temperature variations, ranging from -60 degrees in the polar regions to over 50 degrees in the deserts. It had active seismic zones that regularly produced earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. It had massive storms called hurricanes and typhoons that could destroy entire cities. It had ice ages and heat waves and floods and droughts, and the life forms. Earth was filled with predators, large cats that hunted in packs, reptiles with venomous bites, insects that carried deadly diseases, bears that could kill with a single blow, sharks that ruled the oceans. The human species had evolved alongside these creatures, competing with them for survival for millions of years. The assessment concluded that Earth met many of the criteria for a Deathworld classification. But the classification had never been officially applied because humans seemed so harmless, so friendly, so eager to please. Genital sat back in her chair and thought. Humans were everywhere. On every station, every ship, every colony. They filled essential roles throughout galactic civilization. They were mechanics and medics and merchants. They were engineers and explorers and entertainers. And apparently, when necessary, they were warriors who could kill apex predators with kitchen utensils. She pulled up Danny Cole's personnel file. Born in a region called Montana, a place known for extreme cold, large predatory animals, and harsh terrain. He had served in something called the military at age 18. He had worked as a planetary surveyor for 2 decades. He had survived 8 confirmed Deathworlds. Now he was a cook.1 human. 8 Deathworlds. 40 planets surveyed. 6 Corvan raiders killed in under 4 minutes. And he was just a cook. How many other humans like Danny Cole were out there? How many humans with similar backgrounds, similar capabilities, had spread throughout the galaxy while everyone assumed they were harmless? Genital began drafting a new classification report. It would take months to process through the bureaucracy, but it needed to be done. The galactic community needed to know the truth about humans. They were not. Category 12. They had never been. Category 12. They were survivors of a death world, who had learned to smile and be helpful because it was easier than fighting. But when pushed, when threatened, when the people they cared about were in danger, they could be something else entirely. The report would recommend a reclassification to Category 4, the same category as the Corvan and the other apex predator species. It would recommend updating all first contact protocols. It would recommend a thorough review of human integration into galactic society. But Genital suspected it was already too late for any of that. Humans were too embedded, too essential, too numerous to remove. The galaxy would simply have to accept that the helpful little creatures who cooked their food and fixed their ships and cleaned their stations were actually one of the most resilient species in known space. On the endless horizon, Danny Cole knew nothing about the administrative panic his existence was causing. He was in the galley, making breakfast for his crewmates. Katie, Sam, and Lucy had decided to stay on as new crew members, much to Captain Verkith's delight. The ship now had the largest crew it had ever carried, and morale was the highest it had ever been. Danny flipped pancakes with practiced ease. The smell of cooking batter filled the air. Crew members drifted into the mess hall, drawn by the warmth and the aroma. Captain Verkith settled into his usual seat at the counter. He had been thinking a lot since Danny's return from Malachor 9. He had questions. Hundreds of questions. But one stood out above the rest. "Danny," he said carefully, "I have been meaning to ask. After everything you have seen, everything you have survived, why do you choose to cook? You could do anything. You could be anything. Why this?" Danny slid a stack of golden pancakes across the counter. He was quiet for a moment, considering the question. "Captain, I have watched suns rise over acid oceans. I have eaten things that would make your stomach turn inside out. I have been alone on worlds that wanted me dead for longer than I care to remember. I have seen the worst the universe has to offer." He poured more batter onto the griddle. But nothing in the galaxy beats the look on someone's face when you give them a good meal. When you take away their hunger and their tiredness and give them something that makes them feel warm and safe and happy. That is worth more than all the survival stories in the universe. Verkith took a bite of his pancakes. They were perfect, light and fluffy and sweet. He felt warmth spread through his body, felt the stress of command fade away for just a moment. "These are wonderful," he said. Danny smiled his small, tired smile. "Thank you, Captain. It is nice to be appreciated." In the corner of the mess hall, Lucy Park watched Danny work. She had not stopped watching him since the rescue. She had seen what he could do when the situation demanded it. She had seen the warrior that lived beneath the cook's apron, but she had also seen him tend pepper plants with gentle hands. She had seen him cook Night Stalker meat over a chemical fire and somehow make it taste like home. She had seen him care for 3 strangers on a death planet as if they were family. Humans were strange creatures, she thought. Strange and wonderful and terrifying and kind, all at the same time. Somewhere in the galaxy, a bureaucrat was rewriting 2 centuries of species classifications. Diplomats would debate and politicians would argue and new protocols would be drafted. But in the mess hall of the endless horizon, none of that mattered. A harmless human chef was just doing what he loved, feeding people who had become his family, making the cold universe a little bit warmer one meal at a time, and that was more than enough.